95.9.
Anyway, this is I'll Express. It is 8 minutes past 1 p.m. I've had the Al Quickie, and it is time for Femme Success because today is for the ladies and it is Wednesday. And I do have an incredible guest that is going to be joining us on Femme Success today. But Femme Success is where we share the stories of women, and we do share some tips that will be able to help women, especially in their professional life. And our conversation today is something that is very, very important. We're going to be looking at how you can thrive at work as a neurodivergent woman. More women now are discovering that they may be living with some conditions. Some are saying, it turns out I have ADHD or I have dyslexia or other forms of, some even say, I'm autistic. And after years of maxing and people pleasing and trying to fit in at work, today we really want to understand what neurodiversity really means and how it shows up in the workplace, most importantly for women, so that they can know that they're fully supported and how they can be seen. And today my guest is Iheoma Nigwe. She is a behavioral therapist with 5 years of professional experience and a total of 7 years in the educational space. So I feel like she's like the best person to talk about this. She's been on the show today before, but not on the Femme Success and not to talk about something this serious. Hello, Iheoma. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm really, really amazing. It's a pleasure to have you on the show again today. I've actually been looking forward to this, and I'm really happy that you can make time to be on I'll Express today. Okay, so let's give the people some context, right? Because they need to really understand what neurodivergent actually means. So what exactly does it mean when we say somebody is neurodivergent?
So when we say someone is neurodivergent, in like the broad layman terms, I would say it just kind of means their brain works differently from what society considers typical.
Okay.
And it's not like an illness or something that's like a flaw that you should, look out for, like, this is this. But it's more of like it's like a natural variation of like the human brain, Neurodivergent people, like, they think in a different way. Like if you're thinking straightforward, their thinking might be, left and right. It takes them maybe a minute to get to where they need to be. They think differently. Their learning process might be different than what is considered typical. They might communicate differently, manage sensory input differently, and things of that nature.
Okay, how does it exactly show up in women? Because we know that neurodivergent it was both women and men, but how does it show up in women?
So I think for women, neurodivergent women, it looks very differently from what it would look like in a man, which is why a lot of women who end up discovering or finding out that, they have some neurodivergent conditions, etc., it's usually diagnosed later in life as opposed to the male child or things like that. But in a woman, it's more of shows up in like a maxed way. So like they have difficulties like following like social behaviors or like social norms. They appear shy. They appear anxious to like everybody else, or even to them, or maybe they're over emotional. So it's easy to tag these things as, she's just a shy child, or, like we say if a woman is over emotional, maybe can be linked to like her period.
Yeah, she's just a woman.
Exactly. she's just a girl. So these are things that comes off in a maxed way. There's different ways that we can write it off in a woman as opposed to a man.
Okay, so many women go undiagnosed for years, and even now I'm in the book community, so we would read about a character and someone on the internet would just be like, I can tell, I can't prove it, but this character is autistic. And one time we did it with this popular show, Heated Rivalry, until the author came out and confirmed that the character everyone thought was autistic was actually autistic. And it was just it just blows my mind. So what are the traits that women should be looking for, the signs they should be looking for before they say, okay, maybe I need to get tested?
I think when you can't really trace it back, if you feel like you're overcompensating or like you have to convince yourself that maybe it's just my period. Like I feel like there's a lot of times where it really isn't your period. It really isn't it is what it is, really. But I feel like people are just really scared of having that label on them because
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing.
Some
So
people think it's a disability. That's
yes,
why.
they think it's a disability, but it's an ability, it's just a condition that's not considered typical, but it's not a disability. You're still able to, I mean, especially in most women, you notice a lot of women are diagnosed very late on in life. So when you really look at it, you've lived life with this condition for as long as you have.
And you didn't know.
And you didn't know. So now that you know, it's just going to help you live life in a better way and understand more of what's going on in here, as opposed to just saying maybe it's my period, or maybe I'm just a girl that just needs to take this medication or take this medication, and just diagnosing yourself as opposed to going through the proper channels to get the proper treatment and therapy and help for yourself.
Okay, and let's go into the workforce now. We've already described how masculine it could be, just trying to pass it off as something else.
Yeah.
How does that affect, like psychologically affect a woman who's working?
Well, I think in the workplace it can be particularly challenging because like you're working harder than others, so you can meet like the basic expectations that everyone is giving you. You struggle with like sensory overload. I mean, if you're in a workplace, it can be loud. You're getting instructions from here, from there. It can get really overwhelming. So you're struggling with that, unclear instructions like office politics and like things of that nature, and like even having to adjust to like work structures. It's very different for women than it is for men in the workplace. So already having that in place, and then having this condition that you're not really treating or like managing in a proper way. So now being in the workspace, you're not getting the support that you need. If you were aware of this condition, like medically, even medically diagnosed, there's a record that shows this. You bring this to work,
and then they know
exactly.
This is
They
it.
know, and then they know how to accommodate you. Hopefully,
Hopefully.
that's it. So they're able to accommodate your needs. They're able to give you support. You're not getting judged. And you don't feel too pressured, or actually they don't put too much pressure on you, because they give you the time that you need to do what you need to do.
That is amazing.
IO 95.9.
Listen to Femme Success. We have Iheoma Nigwe in the studio, and she's been talking with me about how a neurodivergent women can thrive in the office space. So let's talk a little bit more about the workplace reality of women. Iheoma, what do you think are some of the current challenges that the woman in the workplace can face, especially in like a 9-to-5 environment?
Neurodivergent, you're pushing yourself harder than you should, or like harder than you can take, without even really knowing that this is what's going on, which can also cause like increased anxiety, can make you shut down. It can even bring on depression if not treated, properly. And it's also going to create this kind of feeling that you can't cope, which is why I also think when, after COVID, when working remotely became like a big thing, a lot of women, or I would say a lot of people kind of ran towards that. And not because, a lot of times when you ask people like, why do you want to work remote? It's not because of work-life balance or things like that. It's usually because I don't like dealing with people. I don't want to be around people. It's
so much easier communicating with words
exactly.
when they're right in front of you.
Exactly. So these are the kind of things, because as human beings, or like as neurotypical human beings, it's in our nature to want human contact. So when you see yourself running away from that, I think it's time to start asking those questions. So in the workplace, for like neurodivergent women who aren't getting the proper care, proper therapy, those are the kind of things that they would face. And also, like, if you're working under bosses who are just very on top of you the whole time.
If you're the ones that like are over your neck, like,
exactly.
you have to do it this way.
You have to do it this way. You have to do it this way. You know, it kind of, not even that it kind of, it makes you just want to just coil away, like fold up and just be in the little corner by yourself. So.
Oh wow! Like I can already picture like some of my friends that I know have like experienced this, and which is why I really hope some of them are actually listening now because they could learn one or two things.
Yes.
So how might they focus on, like you mentioned how it affects them at work now. Let's assume that this woman who's neurodivergent and undiagnosed is somebody who is in like a managerial position, for example. How do you think it's going to affect her being able to work in a situation where she has to follow organization, hierarchy, and all of that?
See, when you have someone who is like in a higher position, you know, you're managing people. Neurodivergency, like autism and the rest of them, can show up in so many different ways. And it appears differently for everybody. So depending on what it is that you struggle with, being in that position can either be a superpower for you or just be like the bane of your existence, you know. But I also think for someone who is neurodivergent to have gotten to that level of being put in that position to manage other people, you must have shown or like proven to them, because at the end of the day, as women, we don't get to those high places, neurodivergent or not. You don't get there by your brain. I mean, you have to fight and you have to show them that I deserve to be there. So for someone that's neurodivergent, you've fought 10 times harder to get to that space. So I feel like you've already learned or like understood your condition to some extent, even without like a proper diagnosis, and have learned how to work around it in the workspace. So now, going back to your question, I think even with this, the problem comes in with neurodivergent people. It's very hard to get it in both places. So like if you're very superb in the workplace, you know, as a manager and all these things, being that you are probably exhausting a lot of efforts to be in that position that you are. So now it comes to like your home life. It can affect it there, you know.
So there wouldn't be a balance.
Exactly. The balance is very hard there because you're overextending yourself in this place. So this place might be lacking.
Suffering.
Yes, so...
Okay. So now let's talk about accommodation and maybe even support. We'll talk later, like really extensively on support for women. But I really want to know, some workplaces may still misunderstand what neurodiversity really is. And burnout is very, very common among women who are neurodivergent. What exactly does it look like, and how does it, and why does it happen so often?
I think burnout and neurodivergent women, it's usually very long lasting and very deep for women. It can look like I said earlier, mental and physical exhaustion. You know, your loss of skills, you're not motivated to do the things that you would
need to do
normally do, or like things that you have to do, like basic things like waking up, taking a shower, getting out of bed. You have anxiety, you're becoming depressed, you're feeling unable to just cope with people. You know, those are some of the ways that it can show up for women, and these are also ways that can just be easily mislabeled to a lot of other different things, especially for women, like we talked about earlier. Different ways that I think we can also cope with this, especially like in the workspace. Just I think understanding overall what the condition is, and like also talking to a therapist or like stuff like that.
Okay.
This burnout can also happen because like neurodivergent women, they spend like years masking.
Yeah.
You know, you're hiding what it is that you're really feeling because you're trying to you're trying to just adjust yourself to fit societal norms.
So nobody would think, oh, that person is weird.
Like, why are you like that? As opposed to accepting what it is and then understanding it and finding ways to accommodate it and like live with it. So I think that's one of the biggest problems for women. But also, like we said, I mean, it's very hard for women in workspaces. You have to find 10 times as harder. Like, imagine a woman on Wall Street. You know, you're already there with the big dogs. And when I say big dogs, I mean men.
Yeah, I know.
You know, so
the finance bros.
Right. And now you're coming in, and no one is gonna treat you like a woman. Either you shouldn't even sit and expect them to treat you like a woman. You know, you have to fight for that respect. Even if you have the education and the degrees to show for it, it doesn't really matter to them. So
they want to see you in action.
Exactly. All they see is a woman. So because of these conditions that they already have for women, now being neurodivergent in these spaces already creates like a stereotype. So instead of someone to come in as they are and expect acceptance, now they're masking and pretending and fighting so hard to be something that they're not, when in reality you should be as you are, and they should accommodate that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that. We're gonna give you, or Iheoma is going to give you strategies on how you can thrive at work.
IO 95.9.
We've been talking with Iheoma, who is a behavioral therapist, about how women who are neurodivergent can thrive in the workspace. So, and now before we talk about like the tips that she could give you about this, I want to know, what do you think are some of the strengths that neurodivergent women can bring into the workspace?
You know, being able to get the job done and done the appropriate way. Just overall dedication.
Could be perfectionists too. They like to make sure every single detail is to the exact.
Down to the T. So that's one thing that you don't have to worry about. If you say I, you get an I. Might even get something else, but you know, you get what you bargained for and more with them. So.
Okay. So now let's talk about, can you give us some strategies or routines that can help neurodivergent women stay productive?
Yes, I feel like the first thing that can help neurodivergent women at the workplace thrive is self-understanding. You know, understanding and knowing how your brain works is like a very big key to success, because if you don't know what's happening up there, you don't know how to bring it out and interpret it into like your life. You know, another thing would be getting reasonable adjustments, both for yourself and being able to advocate for that adjustment in the workplace. And when I say adjustments, I'm talking about, you know, creating or asking for flexible work hours, making sure that your workspace is quiet, or even, you know, asking for that to be accommodated for you, you know, like a quiet workplace. Because if a lot of the times I feel like even for neurotypical people, if your surrounding is messy, I know for me in particular, I like to clean as I go. You know, I don't like to work and look at messes.
Same thing with me. I'm a lot more productive when my environment is tidy.
Exactly, because if your space is clean, your brain can work, you know, appropriately. Because if you have all these things just laying around, you can't really focus on one thing because you're looking at the other thing, trying to, you know, figure out if I need to go clean that right now and do what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Another thing I would say is like focusing more on your strengths and using that to thrive rather than just forcing like constant conformity, like trying to conform to what the standards are, but instead using that strength to show them that I can do it a different way and it will still yield the same results, you know, but this is just my way of doing things, and I would appreciate if you can accommodate that for me. You know, it's not the end still justifies the means for me. It's not about how I get there, you know, as long as I get there. And I would say the last thing, and aside from like self-understanding, it's also like one of the bigger things, because if you're lacking in this department, especially in the workplace, it's going to be very hard. But if you don't have supportive managers or like superiors or like supervisors in the workplace who understand and who are willing to accommodate you, it's going to make it very hard for you to thrive in the workplace. So I know, like, especially with how the economy is right now, it's very easy for you to just say, you have to take what you get. At the end of the day, your mental health matters. So even for people that are neurotypical, if you're in a workplace where you feel like you're being micromanaged, you have a manager or supervisor that's not understanding of the accommodations that you need, it's probably time to have that talk with them. And if after having the talk, they're still not trying to adjust, then maybe it's time to find something new, which is very hard, I understand. But at the end of the day, it's one of the things that are very, very important for neurodivergent women and people to thrive at work.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about support now. Where can women find support for neurotypical individuals, like especially here in maybe Lagos? Like, who can they talk to? Where can they find the support that they need?
I think especially here in Lagos, I don't have specifics, but
Resources, okay.
yeah, but I know the first step, usually you would go to see like a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
Because I know a lot of the times, like back in the US, if you're coming into work or school and you're asking for these accommodations, a lot of times they want to see a record.
Okay.
A document that shows that this is
what you've had since you were diagnosed.
Exactly. And this is what this person's diagnosed with, and these are the accommodations that they need. So going to a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist, talking to them about how you're feeling, what you're noticing, and seeing if they can give you the proper diagnosis. It's one. Also, like asking specifically about adults' ADHD or like autism, because a lot of times when you hear autism, ADHD, it's usually only, not even, I'm speaking on Nigeria. It's usually very much like focused on children.
Yes, they don't really look at it on the adult
Exactly.
thing. Like, I was working with somebody recently, and the person asked me this question, I have ADHD. I'm like, oh,
Right,
because I picked it up, like, in the first 30 minutes of us communicating with each other.
Yeah.
And, like, it took them, like, a couple of weeks to tell me, I have ADHD,
Exactly,
right?
because as adults, especially here in Nigeria, it's very easy for you to tell someone that, a child has autism, and they're like, oh, okay, and they adjust.
Yeah.
But then, seeing as an adult, I feel like it's something that over here you have to over-explain for someone to actually understand why. They just don't understand why you as an adult.
They feel like you can grow out of
right,
it.
Like, why do you have ADHD at a ripe age of 30? It's like, okay, my age doesn't have anything to do with it. So that's one thing, just like making sure that, you're asking specific questions about adult ADHD, autism, assessments, and getting like the services that you need for yourself. Also, like seeking support through mental health clinics. I know when you talk about mental health in Nigeria, a lot of people are thinking of like just being locked up in like the psychiatric
That's not what it is.
ward, or something like that. But it's way more than that. And I think especially for us here in Nigeria, that's why a lot of these conversations needs to be had often to create that comfortability around, so that when people do start talking about it, no one is looking at them like they're weird, So as adults, being able to find this support through mental health clinics, teaching hospitals, even private psychological practices. I don't know if they have those here, but
They do.
yeah,
There are a lot of them.
Exactly. So those are like places you can get support.
Thank you so much. Iheoma has already told you where you can get support as a neurodivergent woman. Finally, before we wrap up Femme Success for today, what message would you leave with any neurodivergent woman that's listening today that may be feeling misunderstood or overwhelmed or feeling like she's not enough?
I would say neurodivergent women don't need to be fixed. People might tell you that, but you're just as normal as any quote unquote neurotypical person considers themselves to be. You need understanding, you need support, and you have to find environments that allow you to thrive as you are.
Okay, thank you so much, Iheoma, for joining me on Alex Press today.
Thank you.
It was such a pleasure to have you once again, and I really appreciate all the information that you've given out.
Thank
and
you
I
so
know
much.
that it's going to help somebody that's listening right now. They definitely do need to hear about it, and you've been a blessing in their lives today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
IO 95.9.